So now let's talk about classes for functions. So when we're talking about classes, this is a template for objects. So we just did a session on using classes with variables. Well, one of the things you can do too is you can create a class for functions. So imagine in your script that you're creating that you have a lot of functions that are kind of associated with each other. So let's say you're going to be communicating with a database, right? So basically you need to connect to the database, you need to add things to the database, you need to select from the database, you need to delete from the database, right? If you just created individual functions for that, one of the issues you get to is your code will get kind of long, and then if you tried to collapse things, it might not work out so well from a readability standpoint. So one of the things you can do is you can create a class for all of the database functions that your script needs, put all of those functions into that class, and now essentially you have one container for all of those functions. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this session with using classes for functions. So here's an example of a class for functions. So we're going to create a class called calculator. So let's say in our script we've got to do some very specific math type things. So class calculator, and then we're going to do colon. I'm just going to create a variable here. So info equals this class has math functions. So if I want to know what this class does, I can just actually go to this value and see what it says. Then we come down here and we look at the different functions, and these are all pretty simple, right? So define add. So self is going to be the instance of the class, so that's going to be there first. Then we do comma, num1, comma, num2. So basically self is the instance of the class, and then we're going to send num1, and then we're going to send num2. For add, result is going to equal num1 plus num2, and then we're going to return the result, right? Define subtract, so self for the instance, num1, num2, result equals num1 minus num2, and we will return that result. And then define mult, so for multiply, self, num1, num2, result equals num1 times num2, and then we're going to return the result. So again, imagine this is much more complicated math, and so these are three very complicated math functions here, and so we're going to lump all of this under our calculator class. Once we've done that, then we're going to come down here and we're going to initiate an instance of the calculator class. So calc equals calculator with the parentheses. And so that's one of the reasons that we have self here, because we're initializing an instance of the calculator class. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say num1 equals 5. That's going to come from somewhere. And num2 equals 22. So response 1 equals calc, which is an instance of calculator, dot add. So we're going to go to the dot add functions in calculator, and we're going to give it num1 and num2. Response 2, calcs.sub. So subtract num1, num2, calc.mult, multiply num1, num2. And again, so basically calculator is the name. We're creating an instance called calc. So to access these variables, it will be calc.add, calc.sub, calc.mult, right? And then when we come down here, we can simply print out calc.info, so that can give us information about the class, print response 1, print response 2, and print response 3. And again, that's just going to show you the math, 27, negative 17, and 110. So this is the idea behind creating a template for functions using a class. So now all of this can be categorized under this one calculator class. And the important thing too is, again, look at this, right? Look at how long this is on the page. One of the cool things is, again, with code folding, I can just fold all that up, and now I can take a look at what I care about, right? So that's one of the cool things with classes is you can put all of this into a class, and then when you don't need to look at it, you can simply fold that class up so that you can focus on the things that you do care about. And then if there's some issue here, then you can open this back up again to be able to edit what you care about. So that's the basic idea of creating a template of functions using a class. The main thing with this particular way is, again, we are initiating an instance of a class, and so what we have to do down here is we have to actually create that instance. So calculator is the name of the class, so calc is going to equal a new instance of the calculator class, and from there we are able to access that instance using that new name. So that's one of the only things here you just have to keep in mind. Again, self, so num1 and num2. Self is for the instance, and then past that are the variables that you're going to be sending to this particular function. So that's basically what we're talking about here. And again, this can be useful for many reasons. One of the biggest ones is just trying to contain everything when you're building your script. So again, think about it if you're creating some kind of AI script and you have math functions that you care about and you have database functions that you care about. You have lots of these different functions. By dumping them all into their specific classes, that's a way to categorize those functions so that they're easier to maintain and frankly easier to read as you move forward. But that's the idea. It's an incredibly useful thing.